Welcome to Lesson 4 of The Wind in the Willows. It's called The Wild Wood. The mole had long wanted to meet the badger, but the water rat always had a reason to postpone the occasion. Badger'll turn up some day or other, the rat would say. Couldn't you ask him to dinner? Said the mole. He wouldn't come, replied the rat simply. Well, then supposing we go and call on him, suggested the mole. Oh, he wouldn't like that at all, said the rat, quite alarmed. Besides, he lives in the middle of the wild wood. Well, supposing he does like it, said the mole. You told me the wild wood was all right. I know, so it is, replied the rat evasively, but he wouldn't be at home at this time of year anyhow. The mole had to be content with this. Summer had left, taking the warmth and sweet fragrances with it. The autumn and winter days brought cold winds and glistening frost. No one thought about boating, and so, with time to ponder, the mole began to think once more of Badger. In the winter time, the rat slept a great deal. He retired early and rose late. Consequently, the mole had plenty of spare time on his hands. One afternoon, while the rat rested in his armchair before the fire, he decided he would explore the wild wood and perhaps meet Mr. Badger. It was a cold, still afternoon when he slipped out of the warm parlor. The country lay bare and leafless around him. The mole liked the country like this, stripped of its finery, and so with great cheerfulness of spirit he pushed on towards the wild wood. There was nothing to alarm him at first. Then, as his journey progressed, he moved into a shadowy world in which trees crouched nearer and the holes in various tree trunks gaped like hideous mouths. The dusk descended steadily. Then the faces began. It was over his shoulder that he first thought he saw a face. When he turned and confronted it, the thing had vanished. He quickened his pace. He passed another hole, and a little narrow face flashed up. If he could only get away from the holes, he thought, there would be no more faces. He swung off the path and plunged into the untrodden places of the wood. If Mole plunged into the untrodden places, that means he went deeply into the parts of the wood that were off the trail and not walked on. Then the whistling began. Very faint it was when first he heard it, but somehow it made him hurry forward. Then the pattering began. He thought it was only falling leaves at first. Then, as it grew, he knew it was the pat, pat, pat of little feet. The mole began to run. He ran up against things. He fell over things. At last, he took refuge in the hollow of an old beech tree. Terrified and exhausted, the mole lay there trembling. Meanwhile, the rat, warm and comfortable, dozed by his fireside. It was not until a coal in the fire slipped and sent up a spurt of flames that he awoke. He immediately looked round for his companion, but the mole was not there. He listened for a time. The house seemed very quiet. Then he called, "Moley!" several times, and receiving no answer, got up and went out into the hall. The mole's cap was missing from its peg. His Wellington boots were also gone. Wellington boots are waterproof boots that became popular because of a famous British man, the Duke of Wellington. He wore them. The rat left the house and found the mole's tracks leading straight to the wild wood. The rat stood in deep thought. Then he re-entered the house, strapped by a belt round his waist, and shoved a brace of pistols into it. Finally, he picked up a stout cudgel and set off for the wild wood. A brace of pistols means 2 pistols. A cudgel is a club or a stick. I wonder why Rat is taking these things with him. It was already getting towards dusk when he reached the wood. As he moved among the trees, the rat looked about for his friend. Here and there, wicked little faces popped out of holes, but vanished immediately at the sight of such a well-armed creature. The rat called out to his friend for an hour or more, when at last he heard a little answering cry. Guided by the sound, he made his way to an old beech tree with a hole in it. From out of the hole came a feeble voice saying, "Ratty, is that really you?" The rat crept into the hole, and there he found the mole. "Oh, Rat," he cried, "I've been so frightened." Oh, I quite understand, said the rat soothingly. We riverbankers hardly ever come here by ourselves. Surely the brave Mr. Toad wouldn't mind coming here by himself, would he? Inquired the mole. Old Toad, said the rat, laughing heartily. He wouldn't show his face here alone for anything. The mole was greatly cheered by the sound of Rat's laughter. Now then, said the rat, we really must make a start for home. Dear Ratty, said the poor mole, you must let me rest a while longer. Oh, all right, said the rat. It's nearly pitch dark now, and there ought to be a bit of a moon later. So the mole snuggled down and went to sleep, while the rat lay patiently waiting, with a pistol in his paw. When at last the mole woke up, the rat said, Now then, I'll just take a look outside and see if everything's quiet, and then we really must be off. He went to the entrance and put his head out. What's up, Ratty? Asked the mole. Snow is up, replied the rat briefly, or rather down. The mole came and crouched beside him, and looking out saw that a gleaming carpet of fine powder was springing up everywhere. Well, it can't be helped, said the rat. We must make a start. The worst of it is, I don't exactly know where we are, and now this snow makes everything look so different. It did indeed. Nevertheless, they set out bravely. An hour or two later, they realized that they were lost. They sat down on a fallen tree trunk to rest. We can't sit here very long, said the rat. The snow will soon be too deep for us to wade through. He peered about him and considered. Look here, he went on. There's a dell down there in front of us. Let's make our way down into that and try to find some sort of shelter. Here's a picture of a dell. It's a small wooded valley, like in the song, The Farmer in the Dell. Have you ever sang that song? The farmer in the dell, the farmer in the dell. That's all I know of it. So once more they plodded onward. As they searched for a corner that was dry, the mole tripped and fell forward on his face. Oh, my leg, he cried. Oh, my poor shin. Poor old mole, said the rat kindly. You don't seem to be having much luck today. Let's have a look at the leg. I must have tripped over a hidden branch or a stump, said Mole miserably. It's a very clean cut, said the rat, examining. It looks as if it was made by a sharp edge of something made of metal. Well, never mind what done it, said the mole, forgetting his grammar in his pain. It hurts just the same, whatever done it. Mole is not using good grammar. The correct way would be whatever did it. But the rat, after carefully tying up the leg with his handkerchief, was busy scraping in the snow. He scratched and shoveled while the mole waited impatiently. Suddenly the rat cried, Hooray! What have you found, Ratty? Asked the mole. Come and see, said the delighted rat. The mole hobbled up to the spot and had a good look. Well, he said at last slowly, I see it right enough, a door scraper. Well, what of it? And here, this is a door scraper. It's something that you would have right inside your door of your house to scrape mud off of your shoes. But don't you see what it means? Cried the rat. Of course I see what it means, replied the mole. It means that some very careless person has left his door scraper lying about in the middle of the wild wood. Oh dear, cried the rat in despair. Here, stop arguing and come and dig. And he set to work again and made the snow fly in all directions. After some further effort, a very shabby doormat lay exposed to view. There, what did I tell you? Exclaimed the rat. Absolutely nothing, replied the mole with perfect truthfulness. You seem to have found another piece of domestic litter. Do you mean to say, cried the excited rat, that this doormat doesn't tell you anything? Really, rat, said the mole, who ever heard of a doormat telling anyone anything? They simply don't do it. Doormats know their place. Now look here, you thick-headed beast, replied the rat, really angrily. Keep digging if you want to sleep dry and warm tonight. The rat, using his cudgel, attacked a snowbank with great ferocity. The mole scraped busily too. Some 10 minutes later, the rat's cudgel struck something that sounded hollow. He called the mole to come and help him. Before long, their efforts were rewarded. For there in the side of a snowbank stood a little door. An iron bell pull hung by the side. Below the bell, on a small brass plate, were the moonlit words, Mr. Badger. A bell pull is an old-fashioned doorbell. Pulling on the bell pull causes bells inside the house connected to the pull to ring, letting the homeowners know that someone is at the front door. It's like a doorbell. The mole fell backwards on the snow. Rat, he cried, you're a wonder. You knew that if there was a door scraper, there was bound to be a doormat. If I only had your head, Ratty. But as you haven't, interrupted the rat, I suppose you're going to sit on the snow all night and talk? Get up at once and hang on to that bell pull while I hammer. Do you think Mr. Badger is going to be home?